Showtime members, for the benefit of our participants, please use the rename feature next to your name on the participant list to add Showtime to your screen name so that our participants can easily recognize the Showtime members here tonight. At this time, will all participants except our featured speaker, who's that, please mute their audio and remain muted unless speaking. So is everyone settled in and ready? I turned my video off. Okay, no, I did not turn my video off. I turned the camera off. Can I get a thumbs up? Everybody can hear me good. Well, yes. Okay, sounds like we are ready to get started. Your moderator tonight will be Bobby O'Connell. She'll be moderating the chat and catching my attention when necessary. We are here to discuss championship evaluations. This is not an entirely new presentation. This has been a very popular presentation that Showtime has offered over the last few years. It has been updated now to include virtual conditions as well as in-person conditions. And we are also going to watch and discuss some championship speeches tonight. When getting started with evaluations, it's important to remember that while evaluation is the backbone of what we do in Toastmasters, and it is expected that every member will give evaluations of their peers, remember that this is a relationship between the evaluator and the speaker. And so one thing I like to do when I'm evaluating someone I have not evaluated before is help establish that relationship with a simple question. I ask, may I have your permission to do my best to make you a better speaker? That takes the edge off the challenges that I'm going to be sharing with the member on how they need to improve. And by getting that permission from the speaker up front, hopefully it's opening their mind more to the critical aspect, that's not a bad word, critical aspect of my comments so that they can remain open to those suggestions. But when it comes to having that confidence to give that type of critical feedback, how do you think that you're going to do that? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. If you really are wanting to kick the level of your evaluations up a notch, then you need to have some specific expectations of yourself as an evaluator as well. Okay. Let's start with what are the three abilities that every great evaluator needs to have. First off, you have to be able to answer the questions. Yes, you recognize that that's the criteria or that's the skill I'm specifically looking for, or no, I know that is not an example of the skill I'm looking for. That comes along with number two, the ability to measure against specific criteria. When you have specific criteria that you're going to hold the speaker accountable for in their presentation and delivery, then it's much easier for you to give the critical feedback that they need to hear. There's several ways that you can have criteria or establish criteria with that speaker. One is by their project objective alone. Make sure that you know what it is that speaker is supposed to be accomplishing with that project so that you know what to look for as an evaluator. The second way is in contest criteria. We're going to talk a little bit about contests tonight. Know the rules of the contest and know the specific criteria judges are supposed to be looking for when it comes to a particular contest type. Tonight, we're going to be using international speech criteria, so that will be the basis for the criteria we'll be talking about. And then it's always important to know what the speaker aspirations are. As we give evaluations in our club to our peers, we should have some understanding of why they're in Toastmasters, what it is they're trying to accomplish. Is it a confidence that they're trying to gain? Is it a smoothness they're trying to master? Is it content development that they're trying to be proficient at? By having a specific goal or goals from the speaker, you'll also have more information then that you can formulate your evaluation around. And then the third ability of an evaluator is the ability to not only motivate the speaker, but the speakers that are in the audience. I think this is an often overlooked aspect of giving evaluations in the club level, in that when you stand up to give an evaluation of a speech, you're not speaking just to the speaker, but you're speaking to the speakers in the audience. Not only that they all want to speak again, but they will also know how to improve. When you can give good examples that other members can role model from the speech that you're evaluating, that gives those members a direction, as well as the speaker, to know that they've done that they've approached top of the scoring area. But we're also giving them challenges. You help those members in the audience see, oh, I didn't think about that part. Oh, that's a good point. And that helps them become more critical of their own speech development as well. So by giving a good evaluation with good reference points and good suggestions for improvement, you're teaching both the speaker and the other speakers in the audience how to improve themselves as speakers. So let me pause here for just a moment and see if there's any questions or comments about this.
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay.
Tony.
I have a question. On the first ability, the ability to answer the questions, what questions?
Did the speaker hit a specific mark that I'm looking for as the evaluator? But to know what that mark is, you need to have the criteria. And then you need to understand the criteria so that you can say, yes, they did it well, or no, they didn't even come close in that area.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good example would be vocal variety or eye contact. Those are the simple ones. So did they have great eye contact? Oh yeah, I saw really good eye contact from the speaker. Or no, I didn't see eye contact very well at all.
Okay. So you're talking about criteria, basically.
Yes. And again, that criteria could be something that the speaker is asking you to look for. It could be contest criteria that you're measuring the speaker against, or it could be the project objective that you're measuring them against, or a combination of all three.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Moving on. The next milestone is this one. When we were going through the transition to Pathways, as many of you know, I became the Pathways chair for 2 years, 2.5 years actually, and wore a big target on my back where I said, field all questions and complaints here, okay? But one of the things that dawned on me early on in the transition as I dug deeper into the nooks and crannies of Pathways was this realization. If the Toastmasters role model for success is a world champion of public speaking, then why not role model that selection criteria as our standard for evaluating all speeches? Now, this became particularly clear when I was talking about Pathways at a club where there was a guest who had decided to stay for the presentation I was doing about Pathways. And when we got to the evaluation part and I showed the evaluation forms, I couldn't resist. I had to ask the guest, given this type of evaluation, would you, as a brand new guest or member, feel comfortable supplying feedback to the speaker? And the guest said, absolutely, this makes total sense to me. And that was where this concept really became solidified. Not one of the biggest challenges that we have in our program is getting new members up to speed on evaluations. I'm looking at who's here today. There's a lot of experience in the room, but how many times do you see newer members in your clubs wanting to know, how did you come up with that? How did you think to make that comment or give that feedback? They just struggle with making that connection. But if we were using consistent criteria across everything that we did in Toastmasters, wouldn't that make it more consistent and easier for a new member to learn how to evaluate then? And now that we're in Pathways, we do just that. The criteria that you see on a basic evaluation form from Pathways aligns so well with the criteria for an international speech contest. So on the left, we have the criteria for the international speech contest. If the speaker is doing a contest speech, practicing their contest speech, we should be giving their evaluation based on this judging criteria more so than on just the items that you see on the right. But they blend so well. And I've called it out with the areas. If you're looking for speech content or speech development from the criteria, then look in the Pathways evaluation forms in the categories of interest, being well supported, and audience awareness. If you're looking for the delivery elements of a international speech contestant, then look in comfort level and vocal variety, eye contact, and gestures. And then, of course, there's language. And now we have the language category in Pathways as well, the clarity category. This is how we've evolved to make our evaluations more meaningful in the Pathways educational program, because no longer will you do a speech just for vocal variety. Every speech that you do in Pathways will allow the evaluator to give you feedback now on vocal variety. And the same is true for eye contact, gestures, and all the other categories. So we now have synchronization. We have full connection between what we hold up as role models for world champions of public speaking and how we grow speakers in Pathways. So let me pause here and see if anyone struggling with this concept. No? I should pay all you guys. This is wonderful. Let's talk about it a little more in action. And I meant to mention that part of the reason I have the transparency boxes here is because let's just focus on the 5s for the point of our conversation tonight. All right, this is the generic evaluation form from Pathways. If the speaker is bringing their specific project evaluation, it's going to look very similar to this, but in addition to the categories that you see here, it may have 1 or 2 additional categories specific to the objective of the project. The point that you need to leave with tonight, though, is that these 8 standard evaluation categories apply now to every Pathways speech project. And there's more of an emphasis now on content and style. But what we're teaching is by using the 5-point scale to learn how to differentiate between good performance, better performance, and best execution. This makes it so much easier for new members to be able to evaluate even a seasoned speaker or another new speaker. Let's focus on the right side for just a moment. The evaluation criteria is easy for anyone to see a speaker deliver a speech and then look at these categories and say, yeah, I think that was really good, or I think that that was okay. And getting a 1 or a 2 is not a fail in Pathways. It just means there's lots of room for improvement. And so when a speaker understands how the 1 through 5 works, and the evaluator is effectively using the 1 to 5, then the speaker is getting valuable feedback, because they can look, if they got a 2 in a category, look at what it would take to get a 3 or a 4 or a 5. And that also helps them know how they need to improve in that particular area. The challenge with using this form for new members comes on the left-hand side, or page 1 of the evaluation. What you see in gray here is typically what you would see from a brand new member or a newer evaluator using this form for the first time. How many of you have ever witnessed a whitewash evaluation? Yeah. It's when they just go, oh, it's just so wonderful. It's just so perfect. I can't imagine any way for you to improve this. Okay, we know that there are no perfect speeches in Toastmasters. So there's always something that can be found in order to offer feedback and suggestions for the speaker. What's hard is what to put in these boxes. So if you think now of what you excelled at, and you look over to the right side and you see that you scored some things at a 4 or a 5, well, those are the things that you want to comment on in that first box then, the things that they excelled at. What you may want to work on in the middle are the things that maybe score not so well in the 2 or the 3 category, and what they need to really work on, and how they could go about improving that. So again, give an example from their speech and a suggestion on how you think they could have done it better, so that they have something to track to when they're thinking about redoing the speech. And then to challenge yourself, here's where you can take it outside. And if they do something at a, say, a level 4, what can you challenge them to do to get that to a level 5 then? Or if you even scored something level 5, is there still some little edge or nudge that they could use to maybe make it even a 5+? Okay. Remember that 1 through 5 doesn't necessarily mean that it stops at 5. It still gives you an opportunity to say, how do you take it to the next level? So does using these boxes make a little more sense now to you? Does that help? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Then the last thing that I want to talk about here is content and style. We talk about content and style all the time. And if you've studied the world champions or watched the world champions for as many years as I have, and we'll see it tonight in some of the examples, the styles change from year to year in terms of the style that was used by the speaker in winning or even placing in the top 3 of the world championships. And in the past, when we've done evaluations, we've kind of stick to this formula of, you have an opening, you have a body, you have a conclusion, you need to stage and move here or move there, and you should move with purpose, and you need gestures, and you need eye contact, and you need vocal variety. And some of our speakers have even become a bit mechanical. You can spot it in those traditionalist speakers that we have that have not evolved their style over the years. And that's going to hold them back in future international speech competitions. Style has to be able to evolve with the times, but we've never talked about style in terms of evaluation. So what Pathways is doing is bringing emphasis here to well-organized, well-supported, well-delivered speech. That's the content. That's the crafting, that's the delivery, and that includes the physical delivery. But the style has to work well together with the content. And so this opens up a whole new aspect of how we have another opportunity for coaching a speaker based on their style. It has nothing to do with humor, has nothing to do with if it was informational, inspirational, persuasive. It's their speaking style, how they carry themselves, how the facial expression, how the enthusiasm comes across, how they connect with their audience, how they lean in or lean back. It's a lot of the things that we've coached on, but not necessarily put on a list as a specific judging criteria, and that's personal style. So we'll talk more about this again when we get to the example speeches that we're going to watch tonight, but I'd like to just get your minds opening up a little bit about thinking not only about evaluating content and structure and delivery, but also the speaker's style. So let's pause here for questions or comments. No?
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay, Trish, would you say that comfort level, gestures, vocal variety would be sections of people's style that
Could be, but not necessarily.
mm-hmm.
Okay. You want to expand on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. For example, many of you have come to these training sessions that I offer. I have a particular training style. You know, by now you probably know what to expect when I'm going to do a training session. Let's talk about that. I'm going to open myself up here and be vulnerable. When you come to one of my training sessions, what do you typically know to expect? Anybody?
An awesome, well-organized, professional presentation.
Well, thank you, Connie. I should pay you for that one.
Humor.
Humor. Okay.
Word expressions that are very defined and not the normal small, simple words, and yet not using technical jargon.
Okay. Plain English.
Interaction with the audience.
Interaction. Okay.
And slides with lots of words.
Yes, Bobby's working on me on that. All right. Anything else? Okay, I'll throw out a couple kinds of feedback that I get. I can always count on you to shoot straight from the hip. You just tell it like it is. Okay, that's part of my style. Another part of my style is to try to break down the complex theories into something that you can swallow in bite-sized chunks and have a better shot at being able to relate to or understand or take away in a way that you can share that knowledge then with someone else. So those are a couple of things that I've held on to over the years because they are part of my style. I am not here to just get through a presentation with you. I'm here to make sure that you walk away with something you can use. And I tell it like it is. I'm not going to sit here and BS anybody. This is what it is. Some things you like, some things you don't like. But here's how you can work with it, regardless of whether you love it or hate it. Here's how you work with it in order to be effective. So those are things that are part of my style. They're not on a judging sheet anywhere or on an evaluation form for that matter either. But if you're coaching me, those are the things about me and the things that you've mentioned that you won't want to break about me in speaking because that's my speaking style. If my speaking style has become old-fashioned or out of trend or in some way is no longer new and refreshing anymore, I may have to consider changing my style. But so far, the things that people expect from me are the things that they want to continue to expect from me. So that's my style. In Showtime, we have a variety of styles in the our member speakers. And I can know when someone's going to give up. Get up to give a speech. This is probably how the speech is going to go. If they move away from that, then I need to perk up, and I need to make sure that I'm looking at that new style that they're incorporating as to whether it works well for them or not, because they need my feedback on how that change is delivering, and whether it's effective or not. All right. So a whole new aspect for us to talk about that has absolutely no criteria to it. This will be the most challenging part of advanced evaluations as we move forward, is not evaluating against the physical criteria that you have in front of you, but also taking into consideration the style of the speaker and whether it's an effective style or not. Okay.
So Trish, PJ has a comment about, or a question maybe. So what suggestions do you have when the evaluator is using Zoom via the phone and eye contact, gestures, and audience awareness are not visible?
If a speaker is delivering only by phone,
No, the evaluator's on the phone.
oh, the evaluator's on the phone,
Yeah.
and they are not watching the speaker, then I would suggest the club offer two evaluators then. One who's physically present and can watch the visual of the speaker, and one that can also do an evaluation based on just the auditory part of the speech. And that's not bad. When I'm only able to listen to a speaker, I'm zeroed in on entirely different criteria. I shouldn't say entirely different, but eye contact obviously isn't possible. So clarity, vocal variety, audience awareness, the comfort level in their voice, the interest of their content and how it was crafted, and how well supported their material was. It doesn't devalue my evaluation. There will just be gestures and eye contact that I won't be able to physically, give feedback on because I couldn't see them. On the other hand, the person who is watching a speech may focus in more on gestures and eye contact and maybe comfort level as well, or audience awareness, and overlook some of the other ones or not pay as close attention to them because they're not honed into that. They're visual more than auditory. So there could be a balance then, and that's why I suggest that one consideration for a club like that would be to have an auditory evaluator and a visual evaluator then, so that you get the balance. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit more about content and style. So after looking at the international criteria and looking at the pathways evaluation criteria, content is going to come down to these types of things. How well supported, how well organized was the material? This supports the topic and the message. And remember, one of the freedoms that we have in Pathways now is that the topic can be anything that we want it to be. We're no longer limited. Are we using relevant examples, illustrations, facts, and figures within the speech framework? And does the entire speech come together in a unified whole? We talked about that unified whole as part of the judging criteria. When you see a speech that doesn't become pieces and parts, but really blends together, that it's the kind of speech for me that almost gets me to the point that I'm just going to sit back and forget that I'm doing an evaluation or that I'm judging, but I know I can't. I still have to remain a little bit objective. I have to keep a wall up just a tad so I just don't get swept away into the speech. But that's that feeling where I sense that the speech has really come together as a whole. I'm no longer just looking at the physical or just listening to the content. I'm seeing an entire presentation together. It comes down to interest. Did the speech Maintain interest for the audience. That comes down to whether the speaker constructed it well around a clear purpose with an opening, body, and conclusion. Not that you hear the opening, feel the transition, have the body, feel the transition, have the conclusion. That should be smooth as silk. But you should know that you had the opening, the body, and the conclusion. It should be highly compelling and quickly engaging. We talked about this too in judges training, where sometimes a speaker starts and they just take too long to get to the point. They've wasted most of their speaking time setting the playing field and not getting to the point that they were trying to get the audience to take away. So it should be highly compelling, quickly engaging. Make sure that it's interesting and appropriate to the audience. And this really becomes a skill when you can write a speech that's going to appeal to just about everybody in the audience. Tonight, we're going to watch two, what could be categorized as political speeches, but they were written so well that any audience member could have heard them. May not have agreed with them, but they could have heard them. I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay. And then making sure that the audience can understand and recognize the point of the message. I can't remember who gave me the compliment because again, I can't see all of you when I'm doing the presentation, but that I use words, not just overly simple words, but not overly complex words either. But I use terms, and I often will restate things a couple of different ways to make sure that people are understanding the point that I'm trying to make and recognize the point of the message that we're talking about. And then there's audience awareness. As an evaluator, you do need to pay some attention to the audience and how they're receiving the message. Did the speaker craft this in a way they anticipated the types of questions that the audience might have? Now, I love getting questions in my presentations, but when I don't get 50 questions in my presentations, I know I did a better job of hitting the mark with my message, okay? That just kind of goes without saying. So I want questions, but when I'm not getting an overabundance of questions, then I know I did a good job crafting the content. Okay. For a speaker doing a regular topic, did I present? Best example of this is the rocket scientist. We actually had a member in our club who was a rocket scientist, and we loved his speeches because he made rocket science real to every single one of us. We could identify with everything that he was saying. He did not stand up and talk science to us. He talked experience to us, and that was so nice. We so enjoyed those speeches, and we often learned a lot about propulsion systems. Doesn't sound like it might be very exciting for everybody, but we were always enthralled with how he would explain a propulsion system to us. Okay. Aware of the audience engagement. A good speaker will know when they're making a good connection with the audience, and they'll respond positively to that. They'll also know when they're not making a good engagement with the audience, and they'll fix that. They'll do something. They'll change course enough that the audience, oh, now I see where you're going with this, and they'll help the audience catch back up. And then gauging the audience interest, and the response goes along with that as well. Okay.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Anton asks, on the content side, how much of this slide is built from the judging form criteria and how much is built from the pathways evaluation form criteria? It looks more like the judging form criteria.
I think that you will find that there's a lot of it in the pathways criteria, though. When you're talking about well-organized and well-supported, what does that mean? Okay, we get a little more definition about that probably within the contest criteria, but there's certainly examples of it over here. Well-supported means that you can deliver exemplary speech with a topic that is well supported by the content of the speech. All right. If you read through and get down to a 1, you'll see how it's not met versus the 5, how it is met. Okay, what is well delivered? Well, well delivered comes along with comfort level, audience awareness, clarity, and making sure that the audience is understanding with the word choices that you're using, as well as interest in how you crafted it. So in interest, for example, fully engages audience with exemplary, well-constructed content. All right, so well organized, well supported, well delivered. Those are content things, and they are mentioned in pathways. They're elaborated on even further, though, in the contest rules, because it is a contest for, after all. So there's more specific. I did my best to try to blend the two, but sometimes the words in the judging criteria are the best words. Okay. All right, now let's talk about style. We introduced this new concept just a little bit ago. It's not really new, it's been there all along, but we probably never spent as much time talking about it as we are right now. When we talk about the comfort level of the speaker, and this comes right off the pathways form, it's the speaker's comfort level. It's not the comfort level of the audience. Okay, does the speaker speak with enthusiasm and assurance? When they take I like to call it taking ownership of the front of the room. When I'm at the front of the room as a presenter, I own the front of the room. This is me. This is my space. This is where I'm speaking from. I have no doubt I belong here. I have no doubt about my knowledge of the subject that I'm going to be speaking about, and I am ready to rapid fire with you if need be. But I want you to take away big chunks of my message, things that you can hold on to and make use of in your own speaking style or in the mentoring relationships that you have with your proteges, and using these pieces as guidance points to help grow them as speakers. So that is entirely the comfort level of the speaker. When it comes to gestures, it's physicality that reinforces the speech through the gestures, expressions, and body position. We've all seen the speaker that just does circles. I even fall into that every now and then, especially if I'm tired, where we're just doing this and it doesn't mean anything. But if I talk about a little bit more, just a little bit more that you could do to get this skill up another notch. If I talk about something like opening, body, conclusion, that gesture needs to flow. And remember, when you're a speaker, you got to do it in reverse order for the audience, because in the United States, we read left to right. So if it's a sequential thing that you're talking about, make sure you're doing it in sequence, left to right, for the audience. Simple skill, often overlooked by speakers, though. And effective uses of the speaking area. This is going to be a challenge as we go into virtual contest season, because the speaking area is defined by the frame of my camera. In Showtime, now that we're online, we are focused very much on how to present in a virtual space. When we first started doing online meetings and I first started doing online presentations and speeches, I had to become very aware of where my camera frame was. And I did this by simply getting a free Zoom account and recording myself. I learned how far right I can go, how far left I can go, how far up, how far down. And I now have a comfortable speaking area that I can do all my physical gesturing in. I can lean into the camera. I can lean a little further back. I can tilt from side to side. I can gesture big, I can gesture small, but for the most part, I don't go out of frame too often. And that is a skill that you must learn by practicing it. There's no other way to do it. So the easiest way to do it is to just talk to yourself. I used to just get on a Zoom session with me and just talk to myself. hey, Trish, you know, okay, that hairstyle is not going to work in a virtual environment. Those glasses are not going to work in a virtual environment. Oh yeah, make a note to yourself to get that ring light. Okay, so let's go this way then. How far can we go this way before we go out of frame? And I just have a conversation with myself and experiment with my speaking area until I got a natural sense of where my speaking area was. And now I don't think about it anymore. The hardest part is not only learning where that frame is, but learning where your audience is, which is why I can't see your faces right now. I'm not looking at a gallery view. I'm only looking to see if Bobby needs my attention. She's the only one that I'm still, that I still have access to, because my audience is right there. There you are, right there. I can touch you. You are my camera. My eyes must meet with your eyes, and the only way that they're going to do that is when I speak directly to the camera. So hopefully what I'm doing is being a very effective speaker and making sure I'm staying connected with you visually through the camera. You can give me feedback if I'm not. Okay, vocal variety. In a virtual environment, you have some delays sometimes because of internet connection quality, because of whether or not you're using a microphone or using your computer's microphone system. So one thing that I've also learned about speaking in a virtual environment is that I need to slow down a bit. I invested in a headset with a microphone to make sure that there would not be pickup from other things that are happening in my household while I'm doing presentations like this. I get the best quality recording when I'm using a mic. I get the best connection with the audience because I come across easily heard because of the microphone. I'm not saying you have to, but you do need to test your system and find out. And the way you do that is to set up some more Zoom sessions with your friends and family and ask them critical questions. Do I sound tinny? Do I sound too loud? Do I sound brassy? Am I speaking too fast so that my words slur together? Because that happens much easier in a virtual meeting than it does in an in-person meeting. Those are the things that you need to practice with. So learning a different tone, a different rate or speed, a different volume, because you're mic'd or because you're in a virtual space or because you're competing with background, that you need to become aware of. I've been advised that I have 2 kitty cat clocks in this room and people have heard them. And it's because of the speaker and part of the microphone being to the side of my display on my computer that it picks up the sound behind the computer as well as the sound in front. So are you hearing my kitty cat clocks tonight? No? Oh, good. Maybe I finally got it buffered enough and that they're not being picked up anymore. And then clarity, enunciation is very important. If your camera gets out of sync with your feed, with your visual feed, then the sound and the lips will not be moving in sync. It doesn't happen very often. We have one member in our club that happens to quite frequently because of the quality of their internet connection. So they are working to try to solve for that problem because that would definitely hamper them if they wanted to compete. Another reason why, get that free Zoom account and practice so that you know how you're going to adjust for that, or know that it's in this particular case, it's when they switch cameras and they work from an independent camera rather than the camera on their laptop. And so the camera, the external camera is causing the sync problem, and now they have to make a decision to either replace the camera or not use it. Okay. All of these things can, of course, affect the style. because how you come across, how you deliver, how effective you are is what also contributes to your style.
So Trish, I have a question.
Mhm.
Do you think that the background contributes to a person's style, either positively or negatively?
I do. If you are using a virtual background, that can. It definitely can affect your style. If your background is busy, objectionable, too loud, too brassy for some people, that could affect their receptivity to your speech. So something to consider. When I'm doing a Toastmasters presentation, I generally will always make sure I use the Toastmasters background. When I'm representing myself in a video conference, I will change to a background, but I will always try to find one that accomplishes a couple of things. One, still gives a professional image, and two, doesn't bleed with what I'm wearing. Okay, bleeding is a big problem with a virtual background, and why we don't recommend them for competing. But we do not recommend a virtual background for when you're competing, because if you have issues, it becomes distractive from your speech and probably can cost you the contest then. So if you are going to use a virtual background in a contest speech, it becomes a prop. And so it will be judged the same way. Effective use of the prop or ineffective use of the prop. Okay, it can help or it could hurt. If you are going to show something, if you have a prop in your hands where you're going to want to hold something up to the camera or display something, I can tell you right now, do not use a virtual background, because you will not be able to get the camera to focus in well on what you're trying to hold up to the camera. So the experience has been, the best practice has already been proven, that if you're going to use something in your hands as a prop that you need the audience to see, it's not effective then to be using a virtual background, because the camera struggles with the depth perception. Green screens, blue screens, whichever one that you prefer to land on, are always advisable if you are going to use a virtual background. And then make sure, again, that what you're wearing does not bleed or match the virtual background, because you'll disappear along into your background. Tonight I have a dark blue background and I'm wearing a slightly green shirt, so there should be a little enough of a contrast that it shouldn't be distracting. Okay, I could have worn a bright orange shirt. There's another word for orange though. Coral. I prefer coral. I have a coral shirt that if I'm going to go to something, when I use my Arizona backgrounds of the Grand Canyon, then I try to wear something that will I wear my coral shirt, because it makes the coral in the canyon pop a little bit, but most of the background is dark enough still that my coral shirt is bright enough that I show up well, with it. All right. Yes, a little bit of lens swearingen is still around, and that I have to become a fashionista with my backgrounds. Tonight I'm using a green screen. I'm using the Toastmasters dark blue background, and I'm using a lighter shirt to make sure I have some contrast between the three. Okay, did I answer that one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let's wrap this up by catching the hints. If you're really here to become an advanced evaluator and you want to make your commitment to making them a better speaker, then what are the things that you're going to want to focus on learning as an evaluator? Giving critical feedback. always coming up with suggestions for improvement. All right, accepting that no speech will be perfect, that your mission is to find some way to give the speaker feedback that will help them give that speech better the next time that they do. Not only improve the speaker, but teach the audience something at the same time. If there's a specific technique called for because of the project objective of the speech, make sure you spend a little more time on that, about why that's important for that particular speech, so that you're helping the next speaker in the room prepare to craft a speech for that project as well. Understand the nuances between a speech and a contest speech, and perhaps I didn't make that clear enough, so let me do it now. When you are evaluating a speech, you are coaching to improve that speech and that speaker. When you are judging a contest, you're picking a winner. That's it. You're not capturing what you're going to say to the speaker about how they could have done something better, or God forbid, what cost them the contest and on your score sheet, because that information is never to be shared between judges and speakers, right? So when you are evaluating a speech, your job is to coach and improve the speech and the speaker. When you are judging a contest, you are picking a winner, and you are picking that winner based on the criteria, who delivered the best to the criteria required for that speech contest. And then remember to evaluate the relationship between the title and the speech. Again, often overlooked, but the title is the first setup for the audience. So remember to listen for the title and make sure it makes sense with the speech when it's given. This is very important in a contest. It's good best practice in a speech. Now, big warning. If you're judging an icebreaker speech, a speaker's very first speech, set all of this aside and just make sure that your evaluation encourages them to speak again. You don't evaluate everything that they missed, but you might suggest 1 or 2 areas that you'll want them to start thinking about working on. But the objective when you're giving an evaluation for an icebreaker is to get that speaker to want to speak again and start opening up their mind to the fact that they do have room for improvement and where might be a good area or 2 to start focusing on. But it's all about the encouragement. Remember that in pathways, levels 1 through 3 are their fundamentals, and they will learn fundamentals about speaking, fundamentals about their personal style, and fundamentals that will be knowledge based to carry them forward into levels 3, 4, and 5. Okay. All right, Q&A before we jump into the presentations. And while we do Q&A, I'm going to stop sharing so I can set up the next segment of our presentation tonight.
So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone who wants to jump in, feel free.
Can you expand on, you had said fundamentals, style, and knowledge, the knowledge piece of that?
From levels 1, 2, and 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, think about levels 1, 2, and 3 in pathways. Level 1 is all about the fundamentals. You got to give a speech, okay, an icebreaker about yourself. You got to give a speech with the intent of being able to give the speech again in an improved state, and you need to learn how to incorporate research into your speech. Fundamental skills to a speaker. In level 2, you talk about your speaking style or your leadership style. So leadership or communication, depending on the focus of your path. So that's an introspective reflection on your particular style or your particular style in either communication or leadership. And then it's also going to be talking about some specific, lay the foundation for a specific skill that's going to be critical for the remainder of the path. All right, so that'll be different according to the path. And then when you get into level 3, it's going to ask you to talk about a mentoring experience that you've had, good or bad. And it's going to introduce additional foundational skills that will carry you again into levels 4 and 5 then in your path. So that's what I mean about laying fundamentals and also starting to build a knowledge base for the specific skill. Okay, so if you're in engaging humor, you're going to find what is humor. You're going to find things like that. You know, what is humor to you? That is part. I think it's one of the reflective exercises. So for dynamic leadership, it's going to be more of a leadership focus. For presentation mastery, it's really going to zero in on additional skills you need to master because you're building for a level 5 keynote speech. Okay. Does that help?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, good.
Trish, I just have a comment to make about some of the evaluations that we've been trying in a couple of my clubs. And this is where the evaluator, as they proceed through the evaluation, they will ask the speaker questions to get more clarity or just, I know, check for understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with a person who's got great delivery. His content needs a lot of work because it just borders on not okay. You get that kind of discomfort. I'm working on him using other sources to validate the point he's trying to make. I haven't gotten there yet. But I had to ask him, do you understand what I'm talking about when I need support? Can you give me an example? Do you do that in any of your evaluations?
All depends on which club I'm in. Yeah,
Okay.
every club has their own culture. In my home club, it's you give a speech, your evaluator gets up, they give you an evaluation, you don't interrupt them, you ask questions. That is done after the meeting, you know, so that you hang out for the post-hosty part and you talk to your evaluator one-on-one, or you set up time to talk with them one-on-one, you know, to do that kind of thing. There's another club that I'm in though, where we tend to evaluate the evaluators. We also evaluate the topic speakers. You know, so entirely different. And I'll never forget the first time I was called on an evaluator to be an evaluator and didn't know that was my job, was to evaluate all of those things. Yeah, so that was a real eye-opener, and I suggested they needed to work on their mentoring program too, to better prepare. So it all depends on the club culture, but I think that it has to occur at some point, whether it occurs at the time of the evaluation or whether it occurs separate from the meeting. I still think that's an important part of what we do, how we collaborate together with our fellow members in our clubs to make sure that everybody is having those experiences. If I send an evaluation to someone, I may not do it as well as I used to do it, but I always put, if you want to talk to me more about this, you know, or I'll make a comment on evaluation, would love to carry on this conversation and go deeper, you know, give me a call, you know, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So the invitation always stands.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
Quick, if I may, Trish, this is Robin.
Mhm.
Does this change much if you're working as a mentor with somebody who's relatively new working on a speech? I mean, are you still just focusing on certain things or helping them, or I don't want to throw too much at them, but I want to throw enough.
I think it's important that in a mentoring relationship that you always think about, first off, where they are today, where your protege is today skill-wise. And second, what are they expecting to get out of mentoring? My mentoring sessions always start off with what's most important to you. You know, I won't focus on the things then that are just important to me. I'll focus on the things that are important to you. So what is it that's most important that you want to, you know, work on? And then I try to I try to speak to that. Then your job is to advance them, so I've been in situations where, I've said, okay, in fact, I just did this recently with a brand new member. They didn't handle themselves well in a situation at a club meeting. And it was, my mentoring session the mentoring session they scheduled with me. And so after we addressed the things that were on their list, I just asked, I have one thing on my list that I'd like to talk to you about. Well, sure, and I said, okay, well, just remember, I'm here to help you. And one thing that I think you need is, how are you going to fit in with the other members of the club? If you're overly critical of them, they're not going to want to have a relationship with you. So be cautious in your feedback, or your opinions that you share in the meeting, because these are brand new people. They don't know you, you don't know them. So don't start off with what could be interpreted as hostile remarks, and I did it as gently as I could, and stopped and waited for a response, and how that pill went down, to make sure that it was still a positive experience. But I said, my job is to orient you to the club, and I want you to have a successful orientation. I felt if I didn't bring this up, that I wouldn't be doing my job. So I hope you understand. He thanked me. So I guess it was okay.
Did it help? Did he get better?
I don't know. We haven't had another meeting yet, but when we do, I'll find out, whether it soaked in at all.
But he
Thanks.
did thank you. And that is a very positive reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So because of time, I want to get through at least these two speeches, because you're going to hear what I consider, I actually have 4 of them on my list, but I think we'll only have time for a couple of them. What becomes 2 political opinions, political statements that are being made with each of these with each of these speeches, and they're probably not unfamiliar speeches to you. What I'm hoping, though, that you get tonight is that you hear them with a little different ear. All right, so the first one that we're going to hear is going to be Erin Beverly, who was the 2019 World Champion of Public Speaking. So let me now. I am going to get better at this. There we go. Okay, let's do a sound check. No? Okay,
Can't hear him.
got it. I always forget the little box. You get sound now?
The contest chair was relieved. My title is only 3 words long. But friends, why is this story unbelievable? June 2018, I fly to India to attend the wedding of my friend Brandon and his fiancée, Devika. Brandon and family are white, Devika and family are Indian, and I am the only black man there. I can't help but feel different. But I try my best to blend in. I buy formal Indian wedding attire. What do you think? I even participate in a sacred Indian wedding ritual, protecting the groom's shoes. During the car ride to the wedding, my friend Sunit explains this ritual. When Brandon takes off his shoes during the ceremony, Devika's bridesmaids will try to steal them. The groomsmen protect the shoes from the bridesmaids. If they win, they hold the shoes ransom, forcing Brandon to buy them back. It's a game, Sunit says. I think it sounds like a spy movie. Sunit says, Aaron, the bridesmaids will try sweet talk, they will try deception, but don't give the shoes to anybody. Will you accept this mission? Quick fact about me. When I am given a mission, I take it very seriously. I look at Sunit and I say, I accept the mission. At the wedding ceremony, Brandon takes off his shoes. I swoop in, grab the shoes, sit down in the front row. Smooth, stealthy. I feel like a black James Bond. The leader of the bridesmaids walks over. She smiles at me. But gentlemen, have you ever seen a girlfriend or wife smile, yet at the same time, you just felt scared? I call her the ominous smiler. She says, Aaron, you look very handsome today. I say, thank you. Could you pass me Brandon's shoes? No. Sunit said the bridesmaids will try sweet talk. Don't give the shoes to anybody. But Aaron, she says, that's against Indian tradition. When I hear that, the global ambassador within me gets nervous. I don't want to cause an international incident over a pair of shoes. I can see the headlines. Idiot ruins wedding and India-US relations. I almost hand over the shoes, but remember Sunit. They will try deception. Don't give the shoes to anybody. I say no again. Then the ominous smiler, she moves closer. She says, and I quote, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. But you will give us the shoes. I am now scared for my life at this wedding. However, I must protect the shoes because when I have a mission, I take it very seriously. So I curl over in my seat, I press the shoes against my chest, and this is how I watch the wedding for the next 30 minutes. The ominous smiler tries to steal the shoes, but I hold firm. Then she disappears for 20 minutes before taking a seat to my right. She says, Aaron, I don't care about the shoes anymore. You win. I say, do I look like a fool to you? But she doesn't move. I think I won. Sunit runs over. He's ecstatic. He says, Aaron, I'm proud of you. I say, thank you. You took this mission very seriously. I say, that's right. Now, give the shoes to me. No. Sunit said, don't give the shoes to anybody. The ominous smiler disappeared to recruit backup, and I know a traitor when I see one. Then the ominous smiler pounces. She starts pulling my arms. Sunit joins her. 2 versus 1. They pull, I pull, but I hold firm. The other bridesmaids run over. 5 versus 1. They pull, I pull, but I hold firm. The other groomsmen run over. I think, yes, the cavalry has arrived. But they joined the bridesmaids. 8 versus 1. They pull, I pull, but I hold firm because when I have a mission, I take it very seriously. They said, Aaron, just give us the shoes. I said, never! Keep in mind, the wedding is still going on. Devika's family is watching the ceremony as if nothing else is happening. I start wondering, is this normal? Then the ominous smiler signals the wedding photographer. And this dude is huge. He puts down his camera. Then he starts charging. He jumps on top of me. 9 versus 1. They pull, I pull, but I lost the shoes. Brandon paid 10 times what those shoes were worth. But what makes this story unbelievable is not the shoes, nor the events. It is the context behind that game. That game is designed for the families of the bride and groom to get to know each other, which means that among white and Indian families, a different, lonely black man was accepted like family too. We experience so much divisiveness nowadays that acceptance despite difference seems unbelievable. But there are people who still believe in it. Do you? Open your culture, your mind, your heart to people who are different from you. Show the world that acceptance, despite difference, is not an unbelievable story. This is your mission. Take it very seriously. Contest chair.
Okie doke. Can you hear me still?
Check.
Okay. All right. Comments? Observations?
One thing I liked with Aaron's speech, and he did it real well, was his focus on repetition in his key phrases. That was one thing that kept his content strong, and his speaking style real consistent. The one thing I would have improved on is his stage management. You think there were points where he was holding on to the shoes, but he made it sound as if he was a little bit more physical in the movement versus, okay, you engage the bridesmaid in one place and you engage her in multiple places. But when he told me the wedding's still going on, it's like, okay, some of this is in your mind and some of this is physically happening. And he did well to engage in both ways. So that's where I let the moment of disbelief kick in to say, okay, he's most likely just staying in the same place. But for us in the audience, it really is helpful to him to be more physical across the stage.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Anton. Anybody else?
I'm
right.
looking at the form here for the evaluation, the different criteria, the clarity, the vocal variety, eye contact, and all those. And I think he met all of those. He had good clarity. I mean, there was the way he talks, there were some phrases that I didn't get, but I got the general idea. I think that maybe more enunciation would have helped for us foreigners, but he had a good clarity. And definitely he had gestures, his animation, his facial expressions. He said it all. And one of the things that I liked the most was the interaction with the audience. He was always checking in with them. He was asking questions. He was expressing. He had a thread that he followed throughout the speech, and that is when they give me a mission, I take it very seriously. And he did that all the way from the beginning to the end. So, I think he met all the different guidelines that we have here in the pathways, and that they apply very well to the judges' criteria as well.
Was his speech compelling from the get-go?
Trish,
Or-
what was the name of the speech? I missed that.
The unbelievable story.
Okay.
Okay. Did he grab your attention from the get-go?
Yes.
Yes.
How?
Well, he engaged the audience right away, and he told us what we were thinking. You know, it's always audience awareness, and we were thinking, well, why is he dressed like that? And he told us, you know, about the and he make it humor. So right away he caught our. I mean, he caught my attention right away.
Okay. The title of his speech actually became an anchor throughout the speech. And he started off by a total misdirection. How did he start the speech? I don't want to give you the answers. I want to see if you caught them. Okay. How did he misdirect the audience from the very beginning with the speech title?
He talked about how he was at a wedding where there were a lot of white people and a lot of Indians, and he was the only Black person there.
That was point 2.
Okay.
Okay.
But the idea of it being an unbelievable story and attending a wedding, it's like, okay. Okay.
Very first thing he did, Bart?
Oh yeah, that's right. 3-word title.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said my speech title has 3 words.
Yes.
The contest chair will be was relieved because my title only has 3 words, an unbelievable story. And that makes it stick right there. That puts it right there, and it isn't going to go away. Every time he comes back to it, it's no surprise to you. You already know the title, but what happens is as the story evolves, the title morphs into other meanings. First, from being the contest chair, being relieved to only have 3 words that he has to say, to introduce the title. And then to becoming unbelievable because, he's the one Black man between the Indians, and the whites, at this wedding. And then it becomes more unbelievable because of the tasks he's given. And the task is something he does what? Takes very seriously. So now you've got unbelievable story. You've got something that he's going to have to do that he takes very seriously. He's committed to it. And then it leads on into the engaging, interesting part of the story that you're just riding along with because the story is a fun story to listen to. He does a phenomenal job of using humor to keep you engaged and to make the story fun all the way through. Even when there's conflict, it's fun. You're laughing, you're smiling, you're waiting for the next twist and turn in the story. And then it finally gets to the end that you don't see coming. But how it's unbelievable how a game crossed cultural differences and allowed 3 different cultures to become connected with one another. And how unbelievably simple that solution was and why we can't commit to being that way in real life. And now the unbelievable story becomes, if you believe it, can you commit to doing that? Can you commit to looking for better opportunities to be culturally diverse, and culturally accepting? And that's how it comes from being just a simple 3-word title to becoming the whole point of the message at the end. And the message at the end has nothing really to do with the story at that point, other than the story is the example of how a game broke down the barriers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That is the effective use of a title, why the title is important to that speech, why it has to be constantly come back to so that you are gently redirected from its original meaning to its final meaning meaning and why the anchors of the words that he's using. I take it very seriously. You know, I will, yes, I accept the mission. You know, they pull, I pull, you know, but I stand firm. They pull, I stand firm. That's the kind of conflict we go through every day. You know, so when you think about the ending, then all the examples that he was using in the story can take on an entirely different, stronger meaning, you know, than what they appeared to take on when you were just listening to the story. Okay, now we're going to do another one. Barb, while I'm setting the next one up.
I just wanted to point out that 2/3 of his speech was up in the air, wonderful, strong vocal variety, strong words, and then the shoes were taken from him and it was an apparent failure. And then the message came in a soft, slower speaking tone throughout to the end to get his message across, because we hear better and get the message better when it is said in a lower, slower voice.
Yep, it's very true. All right, this one was from this year's World Championships.
Linda Marie Miller, pretending not to know. Pretending not to know, Linda Marie Miller.
If you're ready to change the world, but you don't know how, I have the key. It's just a question, but it's the most powerful question in the world. The question is, what are you pretending not to know? That question changed my life. What was I pretending not to know? I find out when I helped my friend Tony and his son Michael. Michael was not your typical teenager. Once, he convinced his father to let him bring a homeless boy into their house. Michael shared everything with that young man and gave up his own bed until that boy got back on his feet. In college, Michael excelled. As a freshman, he tutored seniors in chemistry. He loved science. He loved science so much, he enrolled his professors and fellow classmates into assisting him as he delivered a science experiment for blind children so that they could experience the love of science that he had. Michael was the whole package. A brilliant mind, a caring heart, a dutiful son, and Tony was so proud. Then the phone call came. Michael is dead. Hit by a car 600 miles from home on a college field trip. I jumped into action to help my friend Tony, who was too grief-stricken to even think about bringing Michael's body home or planning a funeral. I phoned the hospital, who told me Michael's body would not be released until testing was completed. Testing for drugs, testing for alcohol. The police department was called for a copy of the police report. Had the driver been drinking, speeding, talking on their phone? The police said they talked to the woman that hit Michael and she said she hadn't been drinking or speeding. They had no reason to doubt her. Using Tony's Airbnb account, I logged on to seek accommodations for the many family and friends that would be arriving for the funeral. None of the reservations were accepted. Thinking there must be something wrong with Tony's account, I logged on using my Airbnb account, and the exact same properties were immediately accepted. What do you think's going on? How could this be? This is my friend Tony. I've been pretending not to know that I am a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned beneficiary of a system controlled by people that look like me. I live a life of white privilege while Tony has trouble seeking accommodations for his grieving family members. I live a life of white privilege while this amazing young boy on his way to medical school is profiled even after his death, suspected of drug use or being up to no good for simply crossing the street. This amazing young man who once brought a homeless boy into his house, a white homeless boy, his death dismissed based on the color of his skin. The white woman that killed Michael wasn't tested for drugs or alcohol. She wasn't even suspected of speeding, even though she had a long history of speeding tickets. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This is discrimination. This is racism. I was comforted by the fact that I am not a racist. I have never discriminated against anyone. In my career, I have hired many amazing Black people. When my son was young, his best friend was Black. Hey, I live in a very diverse neighborhood. All my neighbors are Black and they like me. I have never used a racial slur or told a racial joke in my entire life. I've been pretending not to know that I am the problem. I remained silent when I saw racism in my family for fear of being disinherited. I remained silent when I saw racism at work for fear of not being promoted. I always blamed it on a broken system, but guess what? The system is working exactly the way it was designed to. In exchange for my silence, the system has made sure I don't have to worry about anything. I don't worry about someone wanting to harm my son. I don't worry about being discriminated against at work. I don't worry about being watched by security guards when I go shopping. And I don't have to worry about being shot if I am stopped by the police. My silence has benefited me at the expense of others. And I will remain silent no more. I now use my voice as an ally for and with people of color. I am committed to helping create a system that works for everyone, not just people that look like me. Look around. Look around at the world today. Don't you agree it's in need of a little change? Fellow Toastmasters, you have the most powerful voices on the planet. Commit right here and now to create the change that you want to see in the world. Let's create a world where there's no race but the human race, one shared humanity. All it takes is finding your truth. And all that takes is one powerful question. So go ahead, ask yourself. Madam Contest Chair.
Okay. Comments?
In the use of props, that was how sometimes less is more. And also mixing where she didn't, it's what sometimes in PowerPoint we need to do better is if the slide has the content, let it sink in. And she used those poster boards to her advantage. They spoke volumes in those moments of silence.
Mhm. One of the best use of props I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing, amazing.
I really liked her title. I mean, that got me interested right away.
Hmm.
By asking the question, what are you pretending? What?
A title that makes you want to hear the speech right from the get-go is a good title.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Was this a soft message?
No,
No.
this is the big risk message.
Huge.
It could have fallen flat in his face,
Mhm.
but because of the passion she had behind it, you knew she wasn't just trying to preach a message and get off the stage.
Yep. She did place second in the World Champion of Public Speaking this year. All right. Anything else that you want to make a comment about before I chime in?
The one item,
Hold
go
on.
for it, Robin.
Robin first. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say, I really like the contrast that she made in the story, where she talked about just her friend and his son and how wonderful he was and all that. And I'm guessing that most of the audience probably was picturing, a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. And then she, again, just brought up that visual of here's Tony, and you could just imagine people kind of sitting back, I would think, and going, whoa.
Mhm.
And then she, built on the rest of her message.
Yeah, the when she set up the contrast, it became not obvious, but it became natural that she went the direction that she did. So it wasn't herky jerky at all. The transition was very smooth. The picture alone was the shock value right there, because I think, to Robin's point, a lot of people were in the audience just going, "Oh, it's just another story. What's going to happen here? It's going to be a sad story, something inspirational. You're going to get me to a high place." But she never. One of the traditional things that we talk about when we're coaching is, if you're going to take people high, then you have to bring them back down, or if you take them low, you have to bring them back up. But she kind of let you just go along and then bombshelled you, and didn't let you come up fast. She made you feel it, made you keep feeling it too, all the way through to the end. And then, of course, the effective use of props. Okay, any other comment before? Yeah, Sue.
Just effective use of emotions. She came close to tears at a couple of times, but she was in control. And just the pacing of her voice. In fact, I thought she gained energy when she started using the props. She kind of waffled her words a little bit. I mean, not enough really to matter, but yet the way she just paced her message at the very end was, I've not seen anybody really do anything like that.
Anton, I'm sorry, I think I cut you off. You had another comment you were going to make.
The only thing.
Oops, we lost you, Anton. You went mute.
My fault. My only item of note that said, okay, this is where she might have taken the hit from being first to second, was that her effort of managing her props, and she had 2 cards up in her hand. The good thing is she didn't let anybody in the audience know that was a mistake. She put the card that she needed to down, and then she went back to the card that she needed to work on it.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those things. It's like, okay, that may be one of the points that says first to second, understood. But
one minor fumble with the cards.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The props. You didn't realize the props were coming. The way she had practiced her staging was to start far enough back and to ease forward in a, not just jump forward, but ease forward. So you didn't realize how far forward she'd come, to the point that she didn't have to lean over too much to be able to handle the cards. How much practice do you think that took? And not just practicing, but recording it and seeing how it would look, because you can't watch yourself lift those cards. You have to watch the recording to figure out whether you lifted them correctly or not. So how many hours of recording that motion in order to get that right? Okay, these are things that we're going to be challenged with in virtual contests this year, you know, and how to be as effective. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to do an in-person versus a virtual, so that you could see both were incredibly effective, incredibly powerful in totally different ways. One had the energy of the staging and the body language to go along with it. Another one had the energy and the passion and simple poster cards. Yeah, both were very effective. The other reason I wanted to do these two, and I'm sorry we're running over about 10 minutes, I apologize for that, is this is trends and styles. Aaron's style last year, 2019, much more traditional, given from a stage to a very large audience. Linda's 2020, in a pandemic society with protests going on everywhere, you know, around the world, giving a powerful speech in a virtual space and doing it very well in a manner that kept you glued to her presentation. Okay, I'm not saying she should have won or not. That's not the point. The point is you have seen two very powerful speeches, one that kept you on it, just a fun ride until you got to the end with a hard hit message at the end in soft spoken voice, but a hard message. And another one that started out with the first card where you realized she was going to be talking about race, and then never giving up, carrying it all the way through to the end. This is the difference in styles. Both very effective, but very different. And there's nothing about dinging on styles. This is where you just have to recognize that speakers today in this kind of environment come across very differently. All the speaking is done virtually. All the words are critical in how they're being chosen. How the leaders of the world, how the speakers of the world carry themselves in a virtual space in order to still craft powerful, engaging, interesting, well-supported, organized speeches in a virtual space. That's what I was hoping would help you understand the difference between content and style.
Yeah.
Content's much easier. Style is not easy. Yeah. But if you're paying attention to what's going on around you, you have to be sensitive to watching how speakers adjust to what's going on in the real world to deliver their message. Just something, a new factor to be aware of, something we should have been aware of for a long, long time and just haven't paid as much attention to. All right, those were two of the examples. I have more. When I share the presentation, you will have access to all the videos on my list. These are by no means my only favorite videos. These are on my list primarily because of the contrast like that. You'll see inspiration done in a couple of different ways. You'll see the contrast between virtual presentation versus in-person presentation. So once I post the PowerPoint, the links will be live, and you are welcome to go out and peruse all of the speeches that I have picked out of all the world champions that I have been watching for however many years it's been now. So, but that's what I think you need to do. If you really want to make yourself an advanced level evaluator, you need to study the champions, and you need to figure out how to coach those nuances. The evaluation forms are only the starting point. How you learn the nuances is what you have to make a commitment to doing. It's much harder. You can't just pulled it out of my brain, or someone else's brain. I would love a neural net plug, but it just doesn't exist. So if you want to be a great evaluator, you are going to have to spend some time working at it. All right, when you can watch the World Championships of public speaking and take those 9 competitors that come across as going, how am I going to pick a winner here? Because they're all so good. That's where you are digging then and peeling back the layers of the nuances and learning how to differentiate good from better, from best at a championship level. And when you do that, you will become a championship evaluator. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to stop the recording now.